Hey everyone, my name's Shanice and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be discussing both the book Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, which was published in 2017, and the TV show which just hit Hulu this past Sunday, May 15th, I want to say. I read the book in preparation for the TV show. It's been on my TBR for forever. I've already read Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You? Both by Sally Rooney, obviously, and I was extremely excited when I saw that Conversations with Friends was going to be adapted just like Normal People. I obviously love books, but I equally love TV and film, so I'm always curious about how certain novels are then adapted to the screen. I think it's a very particular and often risky business translating certain books to the screen, and Sally Rooney books in particular, because they focus so much on characters' interior lives, and films and TV shows are more show rather than tell. So I think adapting her work is a feat in itself. Having now read the book and having now seen all 12 episodes of the TV show, I will try to break down my overall feelings. And yes, there will be spoilers because, it's inevitable because I will be talking about very specific points about both the novel and the show. And I want to just talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and overall thoughts. I'm going to try to keep this as structured and organized as possible, though most of my thoughts are kind of scattered and random. But anyway, let's just begin. So just to speak on the novel for a second without touching on the show, it's now one of my favorite books of the year. I was just captivated from beginning to end. Like I said, I have read Rooney's two other novels, and while I appreciated her writing and her intellect, and her ability to get inside characters' head spaces, neither of her novels blew me away. I didn't have that reaction, this overwhelmingly positive reaction to Normal People, but I won't deny that it's very good. Though I am curious to see whether upon reread of both of those books I will maybe change my mind. I don't know. I'm kind of in the Sally Rooney universe mindset right now, so I kind of want to just reread those two other books. Maybe it's a controversial opinion, but I feel like Conversation with Friends is Rooney's most accomplished book. I obviously loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I was just wildly impressed with how accurately Rooney portrayed a very anxious character, someone who's always in her head, someone who doesn't really believe in herself, someone who overthinks everything. She just writes with such an acuity of interior lives and emotions. So that just blew me away. I love reading about these sort of complicated characters. I know people dismiss Frances as being very unlikable, but for better or for worse, I really identified with Frances because I too overthink everything. I too have anxiety. I think more than I act, and this whole book, though there is, a plot that moves along, it's mainly Frances thinking and Frances processing and Frances judging and Frances just misreading her situation and other people's intentions. So yeah, automatically I know not everyone's going to love this kind of writing style, but it totally worked for me. Rooney wrote all of this, or the first draft of this novel, in 3 months. Knowing that and knowing how young she was, it all worked for me. It inspired me. I'm already working on a short story. This book just came in the right moment in my life. It was like I was meant to read it right now. So yeah, I absolutely love this book, and like I said, it's now one of my favorites of the year. I think my favorite fiction of the year so far, and yeah, I'm a huge fan. Obviously, my expectations for the TV show were very, very high, and that can be dangerous because you're sort of not giving the show a chance. You're just expecting it to do exactly what the book did because that's what you loved originally. But I tried to be as objective as possible when I was approaching the TV show. With that being said, I don't think the show is as bad as the reviews are making it out to be. However, as an adaptation, it was lacking from the casting to the performances to the writing and the structure. I mean, yes, it does follow the general story of the friendship between Bobby and Frances. Frances, again, is our narrator and protagonist. We're in her headspace the whole time. And the novel explores how their friendship is affected by their meeting this other older couple, Melissa and Nick, and how in meeting them, all of their positions and relationships to each other change. It's been described as a millennial novel, a coming of age story, a love story, and it is a bit of all those things. But the main takeaway from the story for me is that it's a bit of a quiet novel. Yes, there is this backdrop of a foursome, an affair, but it's still all taking place within someone's mind. Now, I'm not against TV shows taking artistic liberties in what they want to change from the original source. I think that's fine if it seems intentional and if it adds something to the story. And there obviously were a lot of changes from the novel to the series this time around. In the book, the entire story takes place a little bit after 2008. And Sally Rooney said that this was mainly because she wanted to explore the world right after the economic crash. The characters would be considered millennials because around 2008, Frances is 21. In the TV show, they've changed this to be set in 2019. So now the generation is a little bit younger. They are now Gen Z. And because of the time change, now the ways that the characters communicate with each other also changes. So in the book, the characters would talk to each other mainly through email or they'd call each other, whereas in the TV show, now set in 2019, the characters text. And sometimes they have a FaceTime or some sort of video call, or they have a phone call, but largely it's through text messages. And there are actually some emails, now that I remember, scattered around, and that's usually when the characters are way too nervous to talk face to face or through video or through text. They just feel like they can have more time to self-edit when they're sending the email. So those changes were pretty minor to me. They didn't totally affect where the story went. Another change was that when the characters go on vacation, in the book they went to France, but in the TV show they went to Croatia. Didn't totally affect the story either. I just didn't really see the need to change the location. I thought maybe, okay, they're going to use Croatia to tell us something, and the only thing that I could glean from their decision was that now Bobby has this line about tourism and genocide. Didn't really do anything for me, but yeah, again, it wasn't really about the location in the book. It was more about how the characters interacted on that vacation. So the change was there. Did it have to happen? Not really, but not that important. I already talked about how the novel lives within Frances's head, so obviously in the TV show you don't really get her thoughts, just her facial reactions. And I thought the actress Alison Oliver, who plays Frances, did an excellent job of trying to portray what was inside her character's head through her facial expressions. It's kind of difficult when that character tends to withhold emotionally and not really express herself that much physically, but you know, for what her character was given to do, I think she did a really good job. However, I do believe that a lot is still lost with the removal of that narration. It would be weird to have a voiceover on the show or to have some sort of narrative gimmick whereby you get someone's internal monologue. I know that wasn't going to happen in the show, but it's what made the story very special and unique to me. And because the show couldn't have that, I feel like that was a huge battle for it to overcome. I never felt like it gave us the film or visual media equivalent of a lucid narration. Another very big change that I don't think helped the show in any way was how they portrayed the sex scenes, the very intimate scenes between Nick and Francis. Perhaps the changes were necessary to not make the show too like sleazy or too graphic. Maybe the TV show didn't want to have the sex scenes seem gratuitous, but these scenes in the book are never for the sake of eroticism and they're never gratuitous. They're actually crucial to understanding Francis and Nick's relationship to each other. These intimate moments are when they try to break down some of their boundaries, want to test the other person to see what they like, what they don't. It gives Francis more reason to doubt whether or not Nick actually likes her and enjoys what she's doing, and makes her more insecure about herself, and her usually misreadings of Nick are in turn what make Nick react to Francis the way that he does. Those scenes in the novel are meant to test them and push them in ways that they haven't explored before individually in their own relationships prior to meeting each other. But the TV show reduces those sex scenes to very long shots of Joe Alwyn and Allison Oliver making out from like different angles, like these extremely long makeout scenes, and sometimes they'd have the shots of both of them naked in bed after they've been intimate. So we don't even see them negotiating the intimacy in the moment. We just see the after effects that, oh, they liked it, and somehow now they're sort of angry at each other. And we don't get that emotional bridge. We don't get what led to them really responding this way. Sometimes in the show, when you're watching, if you haven't read the book, you might be confused as to why are they so sensitive? Like, why are they reacting to each other? You might just dismiss it as miscommunication, but what the book is able to do that the show, to me, isn't, is extrapolate just the human insecurities that we all have whenever we are in a place of vulnerability. Speaking of Nick, played by Joel Alwyn, I unfortunately do agree with what seems to be the consensus online, in that he was just miscast. He's not the only person who to me was miscast, but he did stand out. In the book, there always seemed to be an interior life for his character beyond the sort of cold and distant facade that he let on. And when he broke that down a little, it made him feel more three-dimensional. But in the TV show, Joe Alwyn always seemed a little bit like medicated and sedated. He just seemed, it was a very odd choice, the way that he portrayed Nick. He also looks very young. I know in the book Nick isn't really supposed to be that old anyway. He's, I think, 32. But he always was very mature. But I think Joe Alwyn's Nick is not really mature as much as he is quiet. And it's a quietude that's supposed to pass as maturity, but that's not really what it's supposed to be. So something always just felt wrong and sort of incomplete about the TV show Nick. Joe Alwyn, to me, to my inexperienced ears, his accent seemed to go in and out between an English accent and a vaguely Irish accent. It's like the end of his sentences sometimes had an Irish affectation, but the rest of his sentences didn't. And I thought, okay, well, maybe his Nick is supposed to be from, England, but he's been around Irish people so long that some of his words have changed pronunciation, or maybe he was born in Ireland but then, moved to England and he's sort of lost touch with his first accent. I don't know, but none of that ever played out. Like, we never knew really anything about Nick and his odd mixed accent in the show. They never made it a point, so I don't know, made his performance even odder than it already was. But to me, the biggest casting offense is Sasha Lane as Bobby. Now, I don't know if I was just, influenced by the cover of the novel, but, I always took this person to look like Bobby. I almost imagined a young Sinead O'Connor playing Bobby. Though I envisioned Bobby looking like this, it didn't have to be the same race. Like, I don't really have a problem with Sasha Lane being Bobby because she's mixed race at all. It's more the air that she had on the show. She delivered her lines like she was just shrugging everything off. Like, she's too cool to even be bothered to share her opinion. She just seemed very condescending on the show. She had this like very bohemian, laid back vibe, which is not Bobby at all. You know, Bobby is, if anything, is too emotional, too passionate, too ready and confident to say whatever she feels. You know, she has this electricity about her. She's the type of person that some may easily dismiss as being, you know, radical, but she's just self-assured, self-possessed, and knows what she wants generally. Sasha Lane's Bobby is, she just likes to drink. She likes to almost intentionally put Frances down. I think book Bobby, yes, she had her moments of judgmentalism toward Frances, but I always felt like she recognized it quickly after and apologized, whereas I think the TV show Bobby enjoyed hurting Frances too much. Like, their relationship was just not right. In addition to her reading the lines like she was shrugging everything off, it also came across like she was reading lines. Nothing felt very organic about her performance. And I know she can act. I've seen American Honey. I thought she was excellent in that. I'm also not sure why she had to be American. When I saw that she was cast, I thought, okay, you know, maybe Sasha Lane was just the best choice for Bobby, that they just had to disregard the fact that she isn't Irish, or that they were going to use her Americanness in some way to say something unique about her character now that she is supposed to be from the US. But no, neither of those options seem to play into the decision to cast her. Some things that the show changed that didn't really work for me either. One was how everybody during the vacation, I guess in this case in Croatia instead of France, how all of them found out about Nick's crush or infatuation with Frances. In the book, the group on vacation, they decide to play a game. It's one of those where someone puts a bunch of names in like a basket or something, someone picks a name, and then one other person has to, through a series of questions, find out what name is written on that piece of paper. So in this game, I think it was Bobby who put Frances's name. It's Nick's turn to guess who it is, and he starts asking a bunch of questions, and everyone soon understands that the answer is Frances, and it becomes very awkward. And this is really how Melissa finds out, in addition to Bobby, in addition to Derek, and I forget what the other woman's name is, but Derek's partner. That's how everyone finds out. In the TV show, it's only Bobby who finds out, because everybody else seems to be too drunk. And the game, they're playing a different game. It's like kiss the person on your left, and Frances happens to be on Nick's left. They don't kiss, but I think Bobby's the one who wants them to play that because she knows already that Nick likes Frances, and she wants them to be uncomfortable. But it's only Bobby who discovers this in the end. And you might be thinking, well, that's a really small change. Does that really do anything for the show? To me, it changes Melissa's arc, because now when Melissa confronts Frances during that vacation about whether or not there's something going on between her and her husband, it sort of comes across as just Melissa being jealous, and assuming that women just like her husband, whereas in the book, she's not wanted to assume this of Frances. She's given her a chance until that game, and after which point she then confronts Frances. So it changes their dynamic. There's another moment that is changed too that to me was kind of drastic for the relationships. So in the book, Nick confides in Frances that when he was younger, when he was a student, he had an affair with a professor who was much older than him. And this is a moment where he's finally breaking down his barrier. He's letting his guard down. He's showing Frances that he trusts her, that there's some level of intimacy that he's comfortable with. It's significant for them as a couple. In the TV show, though, Nick says this to Melissa and Bobby and Frances. So it almost undercuts the intimacy that he supposedly has built with Frances, because this is the first time in the show that she's heard this. Melissa, played by Jemima Kirk, who, though I love Jemima Kirk, I remember her from Girls. I mean, she's a fantastic actress, and she did a good enough job with Melissa, even though she's not really what I envisioned Melissa to be. I think she's almost a little too confident as Melissa, but whatever. But TV show Melissa is not doing a profile on Bobby and Frances. The way that she's introduced to them changes, and I think, again, the change that they make affects the story in a way, because, okay, in the book, like I said, she stumbles upon one of their poetry performances, and she wants to do a profile on them. Because she's an established writer. She writes, I think, articles, and I think she's a freelance writer of sorts. When Frances is approached by Melissa, she's very insecure as to why she would ever possibly be interested in her, because Melissa is very famous, she has a lot of money, she has a great house, a really hot husband, and yeah, it's Frances just overthinking things again and doubting herself. She understands why Melissa may want to approach Bobby, because Bobby lights up a room. Like, everyone is curious about her and wants to get to know her. But Frances doesn't see that of herself. But in the TV show, that changes, because Melissa, after seeing them perform, wants to take a piece of the poetry that they've just performed and put it into her essay collection, because now she's some sort of essayist. And so that doubt that Frances has about whether or not Melissa actually likes her is gone. There is no doubt anymore. There is no room for her insecurities to flow. Now Melissa just really likes her, and it's obvious. So that element that I think makes Frances who she is, that self-doubting nature, that element is removed entirely from just how Melissa is introduced to them. Another weird thing that they did for Frances is, in the TV show, they made her approach Valerie. Valerie in the book was the sort of proprietor, the owner of the vacation house that the group stays in. And she was very uptight, very elitist, hard to impress. Everyone was just on edge when she visited them. And Frances certainly wasn't, she didn't feel comfortable with Valerie. But in the TV show, Valerie is not really any of those things. Yes, she is a bit stuck up, but she makes jokes, she's pretty witty, she seems to like people and be liked by people. And Frances, when she writes the short story, approaches her about her opinion on it, and I just don't see Frances in reality doing this. Just felt out of character. I don't think she's confident enough to have done that, especially because it's her first short story that she's ever written, and it's about her ex-girlfriend and best friend. So yeah, odd, very odd change made. The show removed the self-harm aspect of Frances's story. I think that ultimately was a mistake. Maybe the show was hesitant about maybe that aspect coming across as an endorsement of it, though I don't know why they would think this. I think if anything, it makes you realize that Frances's point of view, her overthinking, all of the things that make her who she is, isn't coming really from a place of superiority. Really at the core of it all is her self-loathing. Like, she just doesn't like herself yet. She can't accept who she is yet. She wants to live up to the idea that people have of her, but she can't see it herself. We see that the first line of her short story alludes to the fact that she has harmed herself before, but that's about it. I think there was something to be said about her relationship to pain, self-inflicted, or some sort of medical pain, how that ties into her her view of herself with Nick and with her endometriosis. Like, I think there's a lot to be said, and an interesting discussion to be had surrounding all those interlinked themes. And did anyone else find that the music sometimes was just overbearing? You know, I felt like the movie Booksmart also had this problem. Sometimes I think the choice of songs and even like the books that some of the characters would be reading were too heavy-handed. I know like Frances reads, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Tova Ditlevson. I have, where is it? She was reading the individual novels of this book, but yeah, she's reading that and Louise Gluck, and it just all seems too like intended for us to read something about Frances as a character instead of just saying it or having her do something. Yeah, sometimes that kind of background mise en scène kind of thing can be too heavy handed for me. Alright, so I've spent a lot of time talking about what I didn't love about the show, but I didn't think it was a complete disaster at all. So things that I did like, I've already mentioned Alison Oliver as Frances. She convinced me. Initially, when I saw the poster for the show, I was a little nervous because none of them looked like what I envisioned their characters to be. But Allison just, I think, knocked it out of the park. The chemistry between her and Nick, Joe Alwyn, is not great. I think the only time that it really worked for me was, I want to say episode 2 or one of the first 2 episodes is when she first meets Nick. How they interact, their awkwardness, how they seem to be the ones who connect in that awkwardness, when Melissa and Bobby are just a little bit more outgoing and social. I thought that was cute. I think that captured an essence of what I was missing from the show that existed in the book. So I thought that first interaction was good, and just Allison in general was great. Also, shout out to the actress who played the mom. I thought she was great, one of the best in the show, which says a lot about the rest of the performers, but she genuinely did a very good job as the mom. The mother just cared more about Frances's feelings and didn't try to make her change her mind and could see where she was coming from, and also wanted to get more involved with Dennis to help him, whereas in the book she was kind of done trying to help him. So yeah, another point for the show for trying to develop those kind of side characters. The scene at the hospital, when Frances goes and gets checked out in the emergency room because of her extreme pain, I thought was handled really well. And also, note to the casting director, like, why didn't we hire the guy who played the doctor to be Nick? I feel like he was more appropriate for Nick, and then make the guy who played the bank teller, make him play the doctor. Just switch it around. I feel like that would have worked wonders for the show. But anyway, back to the hospital scene. Yeah, I thought it worked. I also think that the way that the show explored endometriosis was better in the show than in the book. In the book, I always got the sense that like Frances never knew when her period was coming. It just always seemed to shock her. Whereas in the show, it's more the pain that is shocking to her, than the blood. Like the book, every time that it happened, I was like, isn't she old enough to know that this is coming? Like, shouldn't you have, I don't know, pre-planned, foreseen this happening? Because it happens every month. I liked the scene in the literary agency early on where Frances sort of complains about the process of what she has to do, which is to just look at a bunch of manuscripts, read them, and give a report. Even though she's completely unqualified for that position, she's just complaining about the industry. And I, as someone who is still, after a year and a half, trying to get into the industry and can see a lot of its faults and flaws, I can totally agree with what she has to say. Though I will say, people don't really use physical manuscripts anymore. In agencies, it's rare that a manuscript is going to come and it's not a PDF. It's just interesting to see how the show changed the mode of communication to like text messages and all of that, but they kept this sort of antiquated system for literary agencies. I don't know if that's supposed to be a layer of commentary on how antiquated the publishing industry is, but I don't know, that was just a little bit funny to me. I loved the scene between Francis and I think his name is Raza, the guy who she has goes on a Tinder date with. The way that she asks him after he admits that he likes Yates, she asks him like, "So do you like anybody who isn't on the Leaving Cert?" I thought that was great. And yes, it does show she has a bit of an air of superiority sometimes. She can be judgmental, but I just thought that scene was really funny because I feel like we've all met someone like that who, you know, claims to love a genre or whatever, and the only people that they can name are the, you know, usual suspects, the expected few literary greats on the literary canon, you know. It doesn't seem like they go outside of what they learn in school. And I really liked the scene in episode 10 when it's, you know, Philip and Francis and Bobby and that group of university friends, where they have that sort of discussion slash argument about love and monogamy and what makes a relationship, what is a relationship in that instance 2019, and how Bobby is sort of aggressive in her delivery of why she's against monogamy and why we shouldn't be defining relationships. She's not really understanding that the people around her don't really agree. She's just very forceful and again very confident in how she delivers her opinion, which rubs people the wrong way. But I thought it caught that like tension and that awkwardness very well. So yeah, generally as an adaptation, I'm afraid that Conversations with Friends didn't totally work for me. If I were to remove the fact that it's based on a novel and I was just watching the show on its own, I think it would be, you know, average, passable, competent. But because the source material, the original novel by Sally Rooney, was just so brilliant to me, I can't help but just be disappointed overall by the TV show adaptation. I know everyone on the show worked really hard and I'm sure did a lot of research and all of that. I know it's vulnerable and courageous to put yourself out there as an artist, as an actor, as a writer, and all of these things. But sometimes, even with the best intentions, the product is just not great. And sadly, as an adaptation, I just didn't think that the show was that great. From bad casting, weird casting decisions, to just the lack of the essence of the novel, of the characters. Yeah, it didn't work for me, unfortunately. But, you know, objectively not a horrendous show. So did you watch Conversations with Friends and enjoy it? Did you also have problems with it? What did you like? What didn't you like? How do you think it compares to the Rooney novel? If you haven't read the novel, do you now plan to? Just let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. So please leave your comments down below. Like and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!